On the 41st floor of Waters Enterprise, everything gleamed. Chrome fixtures, marble floors, glass walls that made the city look like it belonged to him. Aaron Waters stood at the edge of his office, staring out over the skyline like he was trying to bend it to his will. Behind him, his desk was covered in printouts, a glowing laptop, 2 untouched espressos, and a legal pad filled with half-erased ideas. He hated inefficiency. He hated uncertainty even more. And right now, both were clawing at the edges of a deal he had spent months preparing. The merger was stalling. Board members were turning cautious. The numbers, his numbers, weren't enough to inspire confidence anymore. That gnawed at him. Aaron Waters didn't fail. He'd taken this company from his father's respectable legacy and turned it into a global powerhouse. Strategic, relentless, controlled. That was the brand, and it worked. Until it didn't. He pulled up the latest demographic reports, tapping a pen against the desk. Something felt off, but he couldn't quite see it. His team had vetted the data. Still, the projections felt stale. He closed the file and leaned back in his chair. The storm outside cast shifting shadows across the floor-to-ceiling windows. It reminded him of nights in boardrooms, his father pacing, saying things like, "Numbers don't lie, but liars use numbers." Aaron never forgot that. He adjusted his cufflinks. Clean, sharp, untouchable. The image mattered. But as he stood in his spotless office, in a building built on ambition and control, there was a twitch in his jaw. The smallest crack in the facade. He didn't know it yet. But tonight, a janitor with a worn tote bag and a sharper mind was about to do something no one else dared: challenge him. The boardroom lights were dimmed, save for the soft blue glow of a projector spilling charts and forecasts across the screen. Rain traced crooked lines down the windows. Aaron stood near the glass, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. From this height, the city looked small, easier to control than the mess behind him. He closed his eyes for a second, just one, trying to clear his head. The numbers didn't make sense. They should have. He paid entire departments to make sure they did. Behind him, the door creaked open. Margret stepped in, mop in hand, eyes low. "Sorry," she said quickly. "Didn't know anyone was still in here. I'll come back later." Aaron didn't turn around. "You're already here. Might as well finish." She hesitated, then stepped inside, careful not to disturb the room's cold order. But as she passed, her gaze landed on the projection. Something about it made her stop. Aaron finally turned, catching her staring. "What is it?" Margret blinked. "Nothing, just that data. It looks off." His brow rose. "Off how?" She faltered. "I shouldn't have said anything." He stepped closer. "No, you said something. What do you see?" Margret took a breath, reluctant but sure. "Those demographic projections? Those are pre-pandemic. Urban growth has slowed. The rural markets you're banking on have changed. There's newer data, better models." Aaron studied her now, sharper. "How do you know that?" "I have a degree in business law and a minor in economic policy." She lifted her chin slightly. "Top of my class." He paused, then nodded once. "You can continue your work." That was it. Margret stood frozen for a second longer, heart thudding. She just cracked open a door, but it slammed shut just as fast. Dismissed. She went back to mopping, but her thoughts stayed on the screen. Margret dumped the mop water with more force than necessary, back in the janitor's closet, tucked between forgotten shelves and a humming breaker panel. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. The tile was cold beneath her shoes. Her uniform clung to her from the humidity. She pressed her palm to her chest, willing her heartbeat to slow. "You can continue your work." That was it? No thank you? No curiosity? No recognition? She wasn't expecting a handshake or applause, but something. Anything to acknowledge that she'd just pointed out a six-figure mistake with nothing more than a glance. Instead, he brushed her off like she was dust on his desk. She pulled out her phone and opened Kobe's last text, just a blurry photo of his notebook covered in diagrams and annotations. His caption, "One day, this is gonna matter." Margret smiled bitterly. Yeah, well, I hope someone notices. Upstairs, Aaron hadn't moved. He stood in the darkened boardroom, arms folded, staring at the same slide. His team had signed off on those numbers, twice. Yet a cleaning staffer, no, a woman with a business law degree and a spine made of steel, spotted the flaw immediately. He replayed her words in his mind. Not her tone, confident, but not arrogant. Her delivery was measured, not showy. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was just telling the truth. That's what unsettled him the most. She had no agenda, no angle. She saw something wrong and said it. He sat slowly at the head of the table, the silence in the room wrapping around him. His phone buzzed. A board member asking for an update on the strategy deck. Aaron ignored it. Instead, he opened a search window and typed Margret Nelson resume. Nothing came up. He leaned back, thoughtful now. He wasn't used to being questioned, especially not by someone with a mop in hand. But she hadn't embarrassed him. She'd helped him, and that mattered more than he wanted to admit. Maybe I dismissed her too fast. He looked at the data again, this time through a different lens. Margret's. And for the first time all day, the numbers started to make sense. By noon the next day, Aaron Waters had already rattled 3 departments. He stood at the head of the analytics conference table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. His executives shifted in their seats, each trying not to be the first one called out. "These projections," Aaron said, tapping the screen, "are outdated, and you all missed it." A marketing lead cleared his throat. "We pulled the most recent report from 2018, Aaron cut in. "Before the pandemic changed the way education is delivered, especially in rural markets." Who here caught that? Silence. He clicked to the next slide. Margret's revised model, typed up from memory and data, he verified himself. Clear, concise, and accurate. "This is what we're using now," Aaron said. "And it didn't come from this room." He left them with their discomfort and went back to his office, already typing Margret Nelson into more serious databases. It took some digging. She wasn't the kind to post credentials online. But he found her academic records, publications in undergrad, even a policy paper she'd co-authored on educational equity. Top of her class. Full scholarship. That afternoon, Aaron stepped into the downtown library, dressed not in a suit, but a jacket and jeans that still somehow made him look intimidating. The front desk clerk blinked twice before stammering, "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Margret Nelson." Margret appeared a moment later, halfway through shelving a cart of books. She froze when she saw him, then quickly put up her guards, remembering how he had dismissed her. "You're not here to return a book," she said flatly. "No," he replied. "I'm here to offer you a job." She raised an eyebrow. "Doing what? Mopping your boardroom and fixing your numbers?" He smiled slightly. "Okay, no mopping. Full-time strategic analysis, benefits, salary. Project Horizon is real and I want you on it." Margret hesitated. This felt sudden, surreal. "I thought you dismissed me." "I did," Aaron said. "And I was wrong. I need someone like you working at my company." The library felt too quiet around them. Somewhere in the back, a printer whirred. "I won't promise it'll be easy," he added, "but it'll matter." Margret looked past him, out the tall windows where the sky had cleared just a little. She didn't say yes right away, but she didn't say no. Margret had signed the last HR form with a pen that felt heavier than it should have. Everything about this place, its pristine glass walls, its hushed confidence, its tailored dress code, was a different universe from the library and late-night mop buckets. A well-dressed assistant escorted her through a maze of sleek hallways until they stopped in front of a small corner office. "This will be your desk," the assistant said, smiling politely. "Aaron asked me to tell you he'll come get you shortly." Margret nodded, setting down her tote. The new laptop, a leather notebook, her name on a brushed metal placard. She barely had time to breathe before Aaron appeared. "Walk with me," he said. They moved in silence down the corridor. Margret didn't bother asking where they were going. The pace was brisk, purposeful. When they stepped into the boardroom, the same one from the night everything shifted, Margret felt her spine straighten instinctively. A dozen executives looked up, caught off guard by her presence. Aaron didn't hesitate. "Before we begin," he said, voice clear and calm, "I'd like to introduce someone new." He turned to Margret, not with condescension, but respect. "This is Margret Nelson. She's joining us as a strategic analyst, effective immediately. She'll be attending these meetings and contributing to all major review cycles." There was a flicker of confusion. One man coughed. A woman glanced between Aaron and Margret like she'd missed a critical memo. Aaron continued, unbothered. "She caught an error in our southeast projections that all of us missed. Her insight saved us from presenting a flawed merger plan to the board. If anyone has questions about why she's here, ask yourselves why she saw what we didn't." Silence. Margret stood still, steady. She didn't shrink, even under the weight of a dozen silent assessments. She didn't fidget. She looked at the charts on the wall, then at the people around the table. One of the senior VPs finally spoke. "Welcome, Margret." The others followed, half-heartedly at first, but they followed. Aaron gave her a nod and pulled out a chair for her beside him. She sat heart-pounding, but with her head high. It wasn't just a seat at the table. It was proof. Proof that what she knew, what she'd earned, what she fought to keep alive after her parents died, it was real. And now it had a place. Not just here, but next to the people making decisions that actually shaped something. Across town, Kobe's phone buzzed with a message from Margret. "First meeting done. They know my name." He smiled, then flipped back to his sketchpad. Because now, things were moving. For both of them. The first month was brutal. Margret showed up early, stayed late, took notes like her life depended on them. Every presentation, every spreadsheet, every market breakdown, she devoured it. She asked questions in meetings, offered feedback where it counted, and always backed her points with data. Still, the room stayed colder than the boardroom AC. Some colleagues barely made eye contact. A few pretended not to hear when she spoke. Others gave her the kind of tight, polite smiles that said, "We're tolerating you, not welcoming you." She wasn't surprised. She'd entered through a side door they didn't recognize. She hadn't climbed the same ladder. In their eyes, she hadn't earned the suit, but she didn't flinch, because Kobe needed college, because her parents had raised her better, because somewhere deep down she knew she belonged here, even if no one else did yet. Then came the end of month one. The whole team gathered in the executive conference lounge for performance reviews. Casual for most, high stakes for Margret. Aaron stood at the head of the table. He didn't smile often, but when he did, it was deliberate. "I want to start with something important," he said, glancing around the room. "This department has made a measurable leap in performance this month, and a large part of that is thanks to someone who hasn't had the traditional path here." His eyes found Margret's. Margret Nelson. In 30 days, she's caught errors, streamlined reporting, and brought clarity to 3 ongoing client cases. Her insight isn't just impressive, it's reshaping how we work. The room went still. Even the eye rollers looked up. "She's not here to prove herself anymore," Aaron said. "She's done that. She's here to lead." Margret's breath caught in her throat. For once, she couldn't hide the surprise. She nodded, lips tight, refusing to let her eyes water. After the meeting, Aaron approached her. "Client dinner tonight, Hartsdale Group, you're coming." She blinked. "Me?" You've read the brief. You know their pain points better than anyone. They need to hear it from you. That dinner was the first of many. Soon came strategy sessions that ran into midnight, private flights to pitch new ideas, overnight stays in cities she'd only seen in textbooks. And in every room, at every table, Aaron made sure she had a voice. Sometimes she caught him watching her, curious, thoughtful, not just as an employee, as someone he respected, maybe even depended on. She was no longer the girl in the uniform with a mop. She was the one they listened to. Kobe never stopped sketching, even with AP exams looming and late nights helping Margret around the apartment. He'd sit at the kitchen table with parts scattered like puzzle pieces. Wires, cheap circuit boards, an old cracked tablet he'd pulled from a thrift store bin. It wasn't much, but it was enough to build something that worked. It did work. His prototype, a simple, durable tablet that ran basic educational software offline, booted up with a homemade logo and a clean, simple interface. He called it Open Seed, designed for kids like him, like Margret, like the ones no one funded. Margret had seen the early versions, but she hadn't realized how far he'd taken it until she came home one night with takeout and found him demoing the tablet for 2 of his teachers. "Wait," she whispered, setting the food down. "Who are they?" Kobe grinned. "Mr. Lang from physics, and Ms. Marin from comp sci. They helped me with the battery efficiency model." The 2 teachers nodded proudly. "He's got something here," Ms. Marin said. "If we can get a grant or even a partner, this could be in classrooms within a year." Margret blinked. "A year?" Kobe nodded. "I've been entering youth tech competitions. One of the judges works with a nonprofit that connects developers with seed investors." Margret felt something in her chest shift. Hope, pride, and just a little disbelief. The next morning at Waters Enterprise, she brought it up in passing while reviewing a list of philanthropic leads for Project Horizon. Aaron looked up. "Open Seed?" he repeated. "My brother built it. It's rough, but it works." He asked her to bring it in. The next week, Kobe stood in the same boardroom where Margret had once been dismissed, now nervously demoing his project to a group of Waters Foundation advisors and execs. He stumbled at first. His voice cracked. His hands shook. But the tech didn't. It powered on, ran smoothly, and made every adult in the room sit forward. Aaron leaned over to Margret during the presentation, voice low. "He's got your brain. And your fight." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Not with the lump in her throat. Afterward, the head of development smiled at Kobe. "We'd like to sponsor a pilot program." That night, Margret and Kobe sat on their apartment floor, with takeout again, laughing, stunned, exhausted. They were building different things, but somehow it was the same dream. Margret was reviewing quarterly forecasts at her desk when the elevator chimed. The polished glass doors opened, and out stepped a woman who moved like she owned the air around her. Tall, striking, perfectly composed in a designer coat and heels that barely made a sound, she made a beeline straight for Margret's desk. "You must be Margret," the woman said, with a warm but not too warm smile. Margret stood instinctively, cautious. "Yes, can I help you? I'm Delia Carter, old friend of Aaron's." The name meant nothing to Margret, but the confidence behind it did. Delia said friend the way people said territory. "We go way back," Delia continued, letting her eyes scan Margret's modest desk, her simple outfit. "I just flew in from London. Thought I'd pop in to say hello. You know how it is. He mentioned you." Margret blinked. "He did?" Delia smiled wider. "Oh yes, said you've been very useful." There was an awkward silence. Margret didn't know if she was supposed to offer her a seat or escort her out. But before she could decide, Aaron stepped into view from his office. "To Delia?" He looked surprised, pleasantly but not overly. "Didn't know you were back. I like keeping you on your toes," she said, breezing past Margret with a quick wink in her direction. As the two disappeared into his office, Margret sat back down, confused. Something about the whole encounter felt off. Delia hadn't been rude, not exactly, but every word had been chosen to make sure Margret knew she didn't belong. And Aaron? He hadn't offered an explanation. Not even a glance back. By 5, Delia was gone. At 7, Aaron appeared at Margret's desk. "You busy tonight?" he asked casually. "There's a new place across town. No clients, no pretense, just dinner." Margret blinked. She hadn't expected that. She hesitated, then said, "I can't. Kobe's working on a project for the pilot launch, and he needs help finishing the user interface. He's behind on a few pieces." Aaron nodded, masking something in his expression. "Of course. Maybe another time." Margret gave a small smile. Maybe. She watched him walk back toward his office. For the first time, something in his stride looked unsure. When she got home, Kobe was hunched over their living room table, surrounded by blueprints and wrappers from a fast dinner he clearly hadn't eaten. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down. "Let's finish this thing." He grinned without looking up. "I was starting to think you went corporate on me." "Not a chance," she said. But later, after he'd fallen asleep and the code had been debugged, Margret stared at her phone a long time. No message, no missed call. She didn't know if she was relieved or disappointed. And for the first time since joining Waters Enterprise, she wasn't sure which side of the glass she really belonged on. Unnecessarily, Aaron sat alone at the table, menu untouched on the table, a glass of water slowly sweating under the candlelight. Outside the restaurant window, the city pulsed, loud and alive, but he wasn't hearing it. He wasn't used to being told no. Not rudely, not angrily, just no. A clean, unshakable boundary. He respected it. Of course he did. Margret had never tried to impress him. She earned her place, not with charm or flattery, but with grit and sharp thinking. Maybe that's what made her stand out. Still, tonight felt different. He hadn't asked her as a test or a trap. It wasn't about power or position. He just wanted to sit across from her without numbers between them. No reports, no projections. He stared at his phone, thumb hovering over her contact. "Don't." Instead, he flagged the waiter, paid for the meals, and left. A piece of the menu. The next morning, Margret arrived early, slipping past the sleepy security guard and taking the back stairs to the 41st floor. It was quiet. Too quiet. A strange energy hung in the air. Her screen blinked with a new calendar invite. Horizon emergency brief, 8:30 a.m. boardroom. Mandatory. By 8:25, the room was full. Aaron walked in, suit sharp, mood unreadable. "There's been a breach," he said flatly. One of the nonprofit partners leaked Horizon specs to an outside firm. "They're trying to file a provisional patent on parts of the open seed code." The room erupted. Kobe's name was mentioned. So were lawsuits. Margret sat still, her jaw tight. "They think because it came from a kid, they can steal it," she said coldly. Aaron nodded. "That's why we're not waiting." He pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the table. "Legal is prepping a full cease and desist. We're filing Horizon as a proprietary development today. And Kobe Nelson will be officially listed as co-developer. Any objections?" No one said a word. Margret blinked. "You're protecting him." "I'm protecting what's right," Aaron said. "And yes, him." There was something in his voice she hadn't heard before. Not control, not calculation, conviction. After the meeting, Margret followed him out. "You didn't have to do that so fast," she said. "I did," he replied, "because this isn't just about a project. It's about the people who built it. And one of them happens to mean a lot more to me than I probably should admit." That stopped her. Aaron didn't lean in, didn't touch her. He just let the words hang in the air. "I'll never cross a line you don't want crossed," he said. "But if you ever change your mind about dinner, just say the word." Margret stood there, silent, watching him walk away down the corridor lined with glass. This time, it was her heart that felt unsure. The second time Delia Carter showed up, she didn't smile. Margret was reviewing new vendor proposals for the Horizon expansion when the elevator pinged and Delia strode in, dressed in black on black, heels clicking with surgical precision. No receptionist, no warning, just her, standing at the edge of Margaret's desk, like a storm in designer perfume. "You've settled in nicely," she said coolly, eyes scanning the spreadsheets on Margaret's screen. Corner desk, real meetings, important decisions. Margret minimized her window and sat up straighter. "Can I help you with something?" Delia tilted her head. "I tried polite the first time. Maybe that didn't land." She leaned in, voice low. "Aaron and I have history. We've done this dance for years. You're impressive, Margret, I'll give you that, but you're not in his world. You were a janitor a few months ago. Let's not forget who made you visible." Margaret's hands curled into fists under the desk. "I earned everything I've gotten here, and Aaron's personal life, if that's what this is about, isn't yours to manage." Delia laughed softly, the kind of laugh that carried ice. "You think this is about feelings, sweetheart? This is about control, about legacy." She dropped a manila envelope on Margaret's desk. Inside is a copy of a formal ethics complaint. It suggests your brother's project received preferential treatment because of your employment here. It hasn't been filed yet, but it could be, very publicly. Margaret's throat went dry. "You're threatening a 17-year-old? "I'm protecting what's mine," Delia replied. "You have a choice. Stay in your lane, keep your distance from Aaron, and this all quietly goes away. Or..." She tapped the envelope once. Margret stared at it, like it might catch fire. Delia leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "Aaron gets sentimental. He forgets the stakes. But I don't, and I won't let anyone, not even some plucky Cinderella story, jeopardize what he's built." Then she straightened, smoothed her coat, and walked off without waiting for a reply. Margret sat frozen. She knew politics, knew power plays, but this wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about her brother, his future, everything they'd fought to protect, and someone was willing to burn it down. For the first time in a long time, fear sat beside her, but so did something else. Fire. She picked up the envelope, walked straight to the executive suite, and knocked on Aaron's door. "We need to talk," she said, holding the folder out to him. "Now. Here, take a look at this." Aaron didn't even finish reading the complaint. He skimmed the top half, registered the angle, and slammed the folder shut. "Delia filed this?" he asked, voice sharp. Margret hesitated. "She said she would file it, if I didn't back off." Aaron stood up so fast, his chair scraped the floor. "She threatened you?" "No," Margret said evenly. "She threatened my brother." His jaw clenched. "She's trying to protect her influence, that's all. Her father invested early in Waters' enterprise. She's been circling me for years." "And now she's circling me," Margret replied, arms folded. "This isn't just business anymore, Aaron. It's personal." He exhaled, tried to calm the fury sparking behind his eyes. "You should have told me sooner." Margret looked away. "I didn't want to make it worse." "I'll handle her," he said. "Delia has power, but she's not untouchable. Not here." But for the next few days, Margret did exactly what Delia hoped she would. She pulled back. She stopped joining leadership calls. She skipped client dinners. She came in, did her job, and left before Aaron could corner her. Until he did. Thursday evening, the elevator opened, and there he was, standing by her desk. Tie loosened, patience thinned. "You've been avoiding me," he said. "I've been busy," she replied, not looking up. "Busy dodging meetings you helped schedule?" He stepped closer. "Talk to me." Margret stood. The office was quiet, a few late working staff lingering nearby, but she didn't care. "I told you from the beginning, Kobe comes first," she said. "And now his name is in the middle of office politics. He's just a kid, Aaron. I'm protecting him. But you're not protecting me," she said, voice rising slightly. "You put me in that room, at that table, and now people like Delia are using that against us." Aaron looked stunned for a moment, not because she was wrong, but because she was right. "I'm thinking about leaving," she said softly, "getting a job somewhere quieter. Somewhere no one knows me. Somewhere I can just do the work, without it turning into this." He shook his head. "You don't get to disappear. Not after everything you've built here. I didn't come here to be your project, she said. Or your charity. Or your complication. You're none of those things, he replied. You're the most capable person I've hired in years, and I'll fire anyone who tries to make you feel otherwise, including Delia. Margret looked at him, searching his face for anything. Truth, motive, maybe something in between. I don't want you to fight for me, she said. I want you to understand why I won't let anyone mess with Kobe's future. Aaron stepped back, nodded once, and said quietly, Then let's fight for him together. Margret blinked. Not asking you to be less protective. He continued, I'm asking you to let me be protective too. Of him. Of you. She swallowed, unsure. And what if I walk? He offered a small, worn smile. Then I'll still make sure Open Seed survives. And I'll still be in your corner, even if I'm not in your life. Silence. Margret didn't respond, not yet. Something softened in her shoulders. Not surrender, just consideration. The Horizon pilot launch drew more attention than anyone expected. What started as a quiet tech initiative ballooned into a full-blown media event. Journalists lined up for interviews. Education blogs ran features on the teenage innovator and his brilliant sister. A local news team requested a sit-down with Kobe and Margret together. Investors from 3 states RSVP'd to the showcase. It was too big to hide behind now, and Margret had a choice to make. That morning, she stood outside the Waters Enterprise building, watching her reflection in the massive glass facade. Inside, her name was listed on the event program as co-director, Horizon Strategy. She was supposed to give the closing remarks. Her phone buzzed. A message from Aaron, room's full. We saved your seat at the front. Let me know if you're not coming. I'll cover you. Always. No pressure. No push. But he was still waiting. She thought about everything. Delia's threat, the boardroom silences, the ache of being underestimated. But she also thought about Kobe, who was inside right now with a microphone clipped to his collar, demoing tech he built with his own hands. Tech she helped carry forward. And Aaron, who hadn't just offered support, but real respect. She took a breath and walked inside. A blank. The launch was electric. Kobe's demo was flawless. Live users, preloaded coursework, seamless offline access. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. He stood frozen for a second, before Margret pulled him into a hug. And then, it was her turn. She stepped onto the small stage, eyes scanning a crowd of CEOs, philanthropists, reporters, and Aaron, standing along the side wall, arms crossed, but eyes on her like nothing else existed. I wasn't supposed to be here, she began. Not in this room, not on this stage. A few months ago, I was cleaning offices in this building, doing my best to survive. She paused. The room stilled. But here's the truth. Every one of us has something valuable. Some fight, some fire. I was lucky enough to be noticed. But Kobe, he built something. And what you saw today, it's just the beginning. Applause again. Real, earned. When the event ended, Kobe was whisked off by a nonprofit rep eager to talk funding. Margret lingered near the hallway, alone until Aaron found her. You crushed it, he said. She smiled, tired, but steady. I stayed. I noticed. They didn't say anything for a moment. Then she added, I'm not going anywhere. Not yet. Aaron exhaled, visibly relieved. You still thinking about finding something quieter? Maybe someday, but not now. This, she gestured to the emptying room, the buzz still hanging in the air. This matters. He stepped a little closer, cautious. So what are we? Her expression didn't change, but her voice softened. Let's figure out what that is, when no one's watching. Aaron nodded. No argument, no pressure. Dinner when you're ready, he said. Not business, just us. She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. That night, after everyone left, the city glowing beneath them, Margret stood by the glass, with Kobe beside her, both holding sodas like it was champagne. We did it, he said. She nodded. Yeah, we really did. And somewhere behind them, Aaron leaned against the doorway, letting them have the moment. Because some victories didn't need headlines. They just needed to be real. The first real dinner between Aaron and Margret didn't happen in a 5-star restaurant. It happened in her apartment. Not planned, not polished, but real. He brought Thai takeout, after texting curry or noodles, like he wasn't the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. And Kobe rolled his eyes hard enough to sprain something, before vanishing into his room, with a, "Don't make it weird." Margret laughed, relieved, nervous. Aaron arrived, looked out of place, sitting at their tiny kitchen table. His blazer tossed over the back of a chair, sleeves rolled up, eyes tracing the cracks in the wallpaper, like he was reading her life. "This place," he said quietly. "You've held it together." She shrugged. "Barely." He looked at her then, not as his employee, not as a strategic mind in his meetings, but as someone who carried too much, too young, and never let it show. They ate in silence for a bit, letting the evening settle. Then she asked, "What was Delia to you, really?" Aaron didn't flinch. "A fixture. Comfortable, powerful. And she made it clear we looked good on paper. But I never saw her. Not the way I see you." Margret looked away, flustered. "You shouldn't say that." "Why not?" "Because whatever this is, it complicates everything. People already think I was handed a place at Waters. You've seen the looks." "I don't care about the looks," Aaron said. "I care that you're still here, after everything. I care that you say no to me when it matters, that you challenge me." "You care because I don't need you," she said, meeting his eyes. He smiled slowly. "Exactly." Later, after Kobe had fallen asleep, and the dishes were stacked, they sat on the couch. No inches closed, no lines crossed. Just quiet, comfortable stillness. Aaron looked around again. "I feel more at peace here than I do in my penthouse." Margret gave him a sideways glance. "That's because there's no shareholders hiding in the walls." They both laughed, and for the first time, it felt like something real was beginning. Not under pressure, but honest. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other more often, outside of meetings, away from glass towers and suits. Long walks after work. Coffee instead of conference calls. Aaron met Kobe again, this time not as the CEO, but as the man who had his sister's trust. Kobe still kept his distance, but he asked him questions, direct, sharp. Aaron respected that. One night, while walking through a quiet neighborhood park, Aaron finally said what had been sitting between them for weeks. "I don't want to keep us hidden, Margret, but I won't push." She stopped walking. "I know." He waited. "I'm still figuring out where I stand," she said. "At work, with you, with all of it. I've never had space to just be." Aaron nodded. "Then I'll be wherever you need me." Close, quiet, in the background. She looked up at him, eyes soft. "You're already closer than I thought I'd ever let someone be again." They stood there, no need to say more. Not a love story, not yet, but something honest. Something new. The invitation arrived on heavy cardstock. Waters Enterprise 15-year Legacy Gala. Final. Press expected. Attendance mandatory. Margret held it like it might bite. Her name was listed individually. Not as +1. Not as guest. Just as one of the rising faces of the Horizon Initiative. A nod of status. Recognition. Aaron hadn't said a word about the gala. Not even during their walks. Not during coffee. Not in the late-night text where he told her, "You were the only part of my day that made sense." She wasn't sure if that was good or dangerous. The night of the event, Margret wore a black gown she borrowed from a stylist. Aaron's assistant insisted she meet. She arrived separately, her choice. Aaron found her quickly. He looked sharp in a tailored tux, but it was the way he smiled, like she was the only one in a crowd of 100, that caught her off guard. "Glad you came," he said, offering his arm. She hesitated for half a second before taking it. The room was all glass, chandeliers, and curated clapping. CEOs, tech giants, investors. The same faces who once ignored her now nodded politely. Some even smiled. She was halfway through a conversation with a school superintendent when a familiar voice slipped in from behind. "Margret, you look stunning." Delia Carter. Same perfect dress. Same cold smile. Margret turned. Delia. Delia stepped forward smoothly, as if the moment belonged to her. "Aaron didn't tell you, did he?" Margret stiffened. "Tell me what?" Delia gave a soft, pitying laugh. "That he proposed to me. Years ago. It didn't go public because of the board, but it was real. He said we'd revisit it when things settled." Margret's mouth went dry. "I don't believe you." Delia leaned closer. "Believe what you want, but be careful where you invest your loyalty. Aaron forgets to clean up after himself." She slipped away before Margret could reply. Aaron appeared moments later, concern already creasing his brow. "What did she say?" Margret stepped back. "Did you ask her to marry you?" His face froze. "What?" "Delia," she said. "She said you were engaged, that it was real." "It wasn't," he said immediately. "She wanted it to be. I never proposed. Never promised her anything but professional distance and patience I stopped having years ago." "She looked so sure," Margret said quietly. Aaron stepped closer. "She's bluffing. She's trying to shake you." "Well, it's working," she said, voice tight. "Aaron, I'm already standing on glass here. One wrong move and it shatters. Delia's not just jealous, she's calculated. And she's tied to this company in ways I can't fight." He reached out. She didn't move. "I don't want to be a scandal," she whispered. "You won't be. You can't promise that." Silence stretched between them. "I need space," she finally said. "I need to remember why I fought so hard to be in this world, before I got tangled in feelings I can't afford." Aaron's jaw clenched, but he nodded, not with defeat, but restraint. "I'll wait," he said. "Just don't disappear." She turned and walked away, head high, heart spinning. The next morning, Margret didn't show up to the executive floor. No call, no message. Aaron sat in his office, Delia's words still echoing in the back of his mind. Lies designed to wound. But he wasn't going to chase Margret out. He was going to fight. For Horizon, for Kobe, for Ho. Margret didn't disappear. She just stepped back, deliberately, strategically. For 2 days, she worked from the development floor. No boardroom, no corner desk, no late-night strategy calls. She kept her head down, but her ears open. If Delia wanted her to crumble quietly, she picked the wrong woman. Margret wasn't going to walk away from everything she'd earned. She was going to fight differently, and that started with facts. Delia's bluff had one hole: Aaron's silence. If there had been a proposal, a deal, anything real between them, there'd be paper, receipts, contracts, or at least board whispers. Margret started asking quiet questions in quieter corners. By the end of the second day, she had what she needed. Aaron had never filed a partnership disclosure. Legal logs showed no record of any joint assets, private contracts, or even advisory ties between Delia and Waters Enterprise. She'd lied, brazenly. So Margret waited. And when Delia showed up again, parading through the lobby like a cat with a bird in her teeth, Margret stood at the elevator, waiting. "You've got a lot of nerve," Delia said. "You've got a lot of imagination," Margret replied calmly, stepping into the lift with her. Delia raised a brow. "What's this? Round 2? "No. Closure." Margret pulled a copy of the internal legal registry from her folder. "This is your history with Aaron. Which is to say, there isn't one. No record of any engagement, no disclosure filings, no documents. You told a lie." Delia's jaw tightened. "You think that's enough to beat me?" "No," Margret said. "But this is." The elevator dinged, and the doors opened directly into the top-floor media lounge, where cameras were being set up for the Waters Foundation press conference. Aaron was already there, speaking with the company's PR team. He turned when he saw them. and his eyes went immediately to Margret. Not Delia. That was all the confirmation she needed. Set. An hour later, the conference began. Aaron stood in front of the mic, calm and composed, but his tone carried steel. We built Project Horizon to serve underserved students and communities, starting with the innovation of a 17-year-old mind. That idea was developed, protected, and elevated by a team of people who didn't just bring credentials, but vision. He turned slightly, meeting Margret's gaze across the room. That includes Margret Nelson, whose strategic leadership is now essential to the Waters Foundation's mission moving forward. Gasps, flashbulbs, a small ripple of whispered speculation. Aaron wasn't finished. We've also recently reviewed internal concerns raised about professional ethics. After a full audit, we found 0 conflicts of interest and no evidence of favoritism or misconduct. Any suggestions otherwise are false and defamatory. He paused, then looked directly at Delia, standing near the back. And any individuals who use personal history or influence to manipulate our operations will be formally removed from all partnership programs, effective immediately. Delia's face cracked, not broken, just rattled. She turned and left without a word. Margret stood still. Aaron only looked at her. Later, after the crowd cleared, Margret found him on the empty rooftop patio, the skyline glowing behind him. "You didn't have to do that so publicly," she said. "Yes," he said, turning to face her. "I did. Because I should have the first time. You didn't deserve to question your place here, or with me." Margret exhaled. "Delia's going to come for you now." "Let her," he said. "This time I'm not blinking." Silence passed between them, softer than before. "You still need space?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Yes. But I also need someone in my corner who doesn't flinch." Aaron stepped closer. "Then I'll be there. Whatever the title, whatever the role." "I haven't figured out what this is," she said, meaning the two of them. "But I know I want to find out without someone trying to write the ending for me." "No ending," Aaron said. "Just chapters." She smiled. "Well, this one? That was a hell of a chapter." Margret didn't just return to the boardroom. She owned it. In the months following the Horizon launch, she was no longer the girl with potential. She was the architect of its expansion. She led vendor negotiations without blinking. She handled press interviews like a pro. When a last-minute policy change threatened Horizon's rollout in 2 major school districts, she tore through legal jargon and red tape with the same force she once used to scrub floors. The board noticed, so did the press. A feature in Business Review Weekly ran with the headline, "From Janitor to Strategist, The Rise of Margret Nelson." Kobe taped it to the fridge at home. Proud beyond words, her name was added to the executive operations panel, not just as a consultant, not temporary, permanent, official, senior director, strategic implementation. Some of her peers still whispered. Some still watched her too closely. But now, they watched from behind, not above. And Aaron, he stayed steady, supportive, professional. To the outside world, they were his CEO and his top strategist. But behind closed doors, there was still something unfinished between them. Something suspended, not in tension, but in patience. One morning, Aaron sat across from the HR director of Waters Enterprise. "Off the record?" he asked. The director, a woman named Marla, smiled knowingly. "You've never asked for off the record before." "I've never needed to." He handed her a folder. Inside, a full disclosure form, pre-filled but unsigned. "You and Margret?" she asked. "We're not, yet," Aaron replied carefully. "But I'm not going to let something grow and pretend like it's not real. If it becomes more, I want it handled the right way. No risk to her. No gray areas." Marla leaned back. "Well, you're certainly doing this cleaner than half the executive romances I've seen." He didn't smile. "This matters." She slid the form back. Then you'll be the first to know when the line shifts. Meanwhile, Margret stood before a classroom full of Horizon students in a low-income district in North Carolina. She was there to oversee a site visit, but the kids only cared about one thing. "You made this?" one girl asked, holding up an open seed tablet. "My brother did," Margret said, smiling. "I helped him protect it." "You're like the boss?" another boy asked. "I'm one of them," she replied. "Do you wear suits all day?" "Not on Fridays," she grinned. Later in the hallway, the superintendent pulled her aside. "They've never seen someone like you in this role. Someone who looks like them, who's from this community." That hit deeper than any award ever could. That evening, she flew back and found Aaron in the conference room, finishing a late call. He looked up, surprised. "You're back early." They finished ahead of schedule. He set down his pen. "How'd it go?" "I saw what Horizon's actually doing," she said. "It's more than data now." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Margret added, "I heard what you did. HR told me." Aaron tensed. "I didn't want to put pressure on you. I just didn't want anything to come back on you either." She nodded, stepping closer. "That was the first time someone protected me before I asked," she said. He looked at her, something shifting between them again. "I still need space," she whispered. "But I don't want to keep holding the door shut either." Aaron smiled, softly. "Then let's leave it open. No pressure. Just possibilities." "Possibilities," she repeated, almost like it was foreign. "Then, I like that." That night, Margret didn't go home right away. She stayed late, organizing reports, prepping for a new wave of Horizon projects, launching in 3 more states. And across the city, Aaron sat by his window, watching the skyline. There were still headlines to face, still board members to manage, still enemies in expensive shoes. But the future wasn't made of power games anymore. It was being built by people like Margret. The quarterly strategy luncheon was winding down, the kind where everyone sipped sparkling water and talked about innovation while secretly calculating leverage. Margret sat at the head of her breakout table, presenting Horizon's latest rollout numbers to a group of education tech clients. Among them was Sierra Lang, a sharp, accomplished regional director for a West Coast school consortium. Sierra was brilliant, connected, and confident in a way that turned heads when she entered a room. She asked smart questions, praised the Horizon platform's reach, and lingered a little longer when Aaron joined their table late. He offered his signature polite nod. "Apologies, traffic from Midtown." Sierra smiled. "I was just saying how impressive your team is, especially Margret." Aaron nodded, glancing at Margret briefly. "I never questioned that." Lunch wrapped, goodbyes were exchanged, and handshakes traded, but Sierra lingered. As Margret gathered her notes, Sierra leaned in casually, voice just above a whisper. "So can I ask you something, woman to woman?" Margret looked up warily. "Sure." Sierra nodded toward the doors where Aaron had just stepped out. "Is there something going on between you and Mr. Waters?" Margret blinked. "Excuse me?" "I mean, it's just he seems very attentive to you. I was thinking of asking him out to dinner while I'm in town, but if there's something there, I don't want to stir the pot." Margaret's heart didn't skip, it slammed. But her face didn't move. "Oh, we work together, closely," she said, tucking her notes into her folder. "But I'm not stopping you." Sierra raised an eyebrow like she expected more. Margret smiled. "He makes his own decisions." "Well," Sierra said, adjusting her bag, "we'll see if he says yes." Margret nodded, calm and cool. "You'll find out." But inside, it wasn't calm. Not at all. That evening, Aaron returned to his office, flipping through reports when his assistant popped in. "You have a message from Sierra Lang. She asked if you'd like to join her for dinner tonight, just the 2 of you." Said she had additional questions about the platform. Aaron didn't hesitate. Tell her thank you, but I'm not available. Should I suggest another time? He shook his head. No need. The assistant left, eyebrows raised. Aaron leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his jaw. He thought about Margret. The way she said, "You're already closer than I thought I'd ever let someone be." He didn't need to guess how Sierra's question had gotten back to him. But he didn't need the details either. He just knew what mattered. His heart wasn't available. It was already spoken for, even if the words hadn't been said out loud yet. The next morning, Margret walked into the building, feeling composed. The meeting schedule was stacked. Horizon expansion, budget reviews, a new potential grant partner from Chicago. She kept her pace steady. Aaron caught her just as she stepped off the elevator. "Got a second?" he asked. "I have about 15. He followed her into the corner conference room and shut the door. "I heard Sierra asked you something yesterday," he said. Margret sat down slowly. "She asked if we were a thing, then made it clear she was thinking of asking you out." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "What did you say?" "That you make your own decisions." He stepped closer, folding his arms. "And if I had said yes?" Margret blinked, caught. Aaron's voice softened. "Would it have bothered you?" She looked away. "I told her it wouldn't." "That's not what I asked." A beat passed. Then she met his eyes. "Yes, it would have." Aaron sat beside her, not touching, not pushing. "I said no," he said. "To dinner. To anything." "Why?" He didn't hesitate. "Because she's not the one I think about at the end of the day. You are." The air between them shifted again. Thicker, closer. But Margret stayed still. "This is still complicated." "I know," he said. "But what I feel isn't." She exhaled, voice quieter now. "You scare me sometimes." "Why?" "Because I believe you." He gave a small, careful smile. "That's a good start. It didn't happen with a kiss. It happened on a Wednesday. The kind of day where the sky was too gray, the emails too relentless, and the weight of expectation pressed against Margret's shoulders like it had all her life. She was sitting alone in the conference lounge, long after the building had emptied. Everyone was gone. The cleaning crew hadn't even started yet. The tablet Kobe had given her, the original prototype, now cracked at the edge from travel and use, sat on the table in front of her. She stared at it, like it could explain everything. Being here meant everything. It also cost her more than anyone realized. She felt like two people, the strategist who led rooms, and the girl who still sometimes cried when no one was watching because she missed her mother's voice. And then, like always, he found her. Aaron entered the room without a word. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't try to fix it. He just sat down across from her, watching her carefully. For a long time, neither spoke. Then, finally, she whispered, "I keep wondering when someone's going to tell me it's over." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "That I don't belong here. That it was all a fluke. That I was only useful until I became inconvenient." Aaron leaned forward, voice low. "You think I'd let anyone say that about you?" She blinked, and suddenly, her voice cracked. "I think I'd believe it if they did." He didn't say anything at first. Then, slowly, he reached across the table, not forceful, just present, and placed his hand over hers. "You've been holding everything up for so long," he said. "You forgot how to lean." Tears slipped down her cheek, silent and uninvited. She didn't wipe them away. "I'm tired, Aaron," she whispered. "Of proving. Of being the exception. Of wondering what I'm allowed to feel." He stood and moved beside her on the couch, gently pulling her into his chest. She resisted for half a second, then finally, let herself collapse into him. Not out of weakness, out of permission. Permission to stop pretending she wasn't exhausted. Permission to feel safe. Aaron held her like she might break, but trusted she wouldn't. And in that quiet, messy, perfect moment, Margret let her walls down. All of them. They didn't speak for another hour. Just sat, still, breathing the same rhythm. When she finally lifted her head, her mascara smudged, eyes puffy, she looked more real than she ever had. He touched her cheek. "You don't need armor with me." Margret nodded. "But if I fall hard." Aaron's reply was simple. "Then I'll be there to catch you." The next morning, nothing exploded. The world didn't stop spinning. Emails still came, meetings still happened. She still led with focus and force. But something had changed. She walked into Waters Enterprise, lighter, calmer. Aaron didn't hover, he didn't need to. Their rhythm was locked in, unspoken, but solid. And when they passed each other in the hallway, there wasn't a secret anymore. There was just understanding. Later that week, Kobe called her at the office. "So, are you and Aaron a thing now, or do I need to keep pretending he's just the boss?" Margret laughed for the first time in days. "He's still the boss. But he's also the person I let see me cry." Kobe paused. "Oh, wow. That's really serious." "Yeah," she whispered. "It is." The night before Horizon's National Education Summit, the apartment was unusually quiet. Kobe sat on the couch with his laptop open, but he wasn't working. He was watching Margret move around the kitchen, slower than usual, more thoughtful than busy. Something was on her mind. She didn't talk much about Aaron unless he asked, but he didn't need her to say anything to know. He saw the way she lit up when her phone buzzed, how her shoulders relaxed after a late meeting with him. He saw how tired she was less lately, and he'd known for weeks, maybe months, that whatever they had, it wasn't casual. It was real. It was careful, and it mattered. Margret finally sat down beside him, dropping a bowl of popcorn between them. "You've been quiet," she said. Kobe shrugged. "So have you." She gave him a look. He waited. Then he said, "You love him." Margret stilled. "What makes you say that? You smile when you talk about him. You fight harder when he's not in the room. And you finally stopped, waking up at 3 a.m., checking the bank account like the world's going to fall apart." She didn't answer, not with words. He clicked his laptop shut. "Mags, I know you've been carrying everything. Since Mom and Dad, you haven't had room to break, or breathe, or need anyone." Tears welled up before she could stop them. "But you're allowed to have someone who takes care of you," Kobe said. "You don't have to do everything alone anymore." Margret let the silence stretch, then nodded. "I've been so scared that if I let someone all the way in, I'd lose focus, or respect, or something." "You haven't lost anything," he said. "You built a whole world and still let me be a part of it." He nudged her shoulder. "Now let someone be part of yours." The next morning, Margret didn't just get dressed for the summit. She suited up like a woman who was done hiding. She wore the dark green blazer Kobe said made her look like a billionaire who fired people with kindness. Her heels clicked with confidence. Her hair was up. Her heart was open. Aaron found her backstage just before their joint panel on Horizon's national roadmap. "You look incredible," he said, not quietly. Margret smiled. "We need to talk." His face tensed slightly. "Now?" "Now." She pulled him behind the curtain, into the shadowed side hall, lit only by soft track lights and the buzz of the event echoing beyond the doors. "I told myself I'd wait," she said, "that we'd figure this out slowly, carefully. But I don't want to wait anymore." Aaron's eyebrows lifted, uncertain. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer, heart thudding. "I'm saying I'm in love with you. I've known it for a while. And I'm done pretending I'm not. You've respected every boundary, every space I needed. But I don't want space anymore." He stared at her, stunned. "I want this," she continued. "Fully, publicly, no hiding. I want the world to know I'm not just your strategist. I'm the woman you love. And you're the man I chose. Not by accident, but on purpose." Aaron said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then he broke into a smile so warm, it almost undid her. "Say that again," he whispered. "I love you." He took her hands, his voice just as soft. "And I've been yours since the night you corrected my demographic data." She laughed, tears threatening. That's the most romantic thing a CEO's ever said to me. He leaned in and kissed her. Not rushed, not tentative, but sure. When they stepped on stage minutes later, the lights were bright, the crowd massive. But for a moment, it was just them. Two people who had climbed through grief, pressure, fear, and finally reached something solid, together. The first photo hit the internet before they'd even finished the panel. Aaron, hand on the small of Margret's back, leaning in, just a little too close. Margret, smiling. Not the professional smile she wore in boardrooms, but something softer. Something real. By the time they returned to their home that evening, the headlines were already circling. Waters CEO and Horizon strategist, power couple or problematic pair. From janitor to girlfriend, inside Margret Nelson's meteoric rise, too close for comfort, Waters Enterprise faces new internal questions. Aaron's PR team was calm, but firm. We need a response, his chief of communications told him. Even if it's just a statement acknowledging the relationship and ensuring there's no ethical breach. Aaron didn't flinch. Draft it, I'll approve it tonight. Margret sat on the couch, reading one of the online pieces out loud. Insiders say the relationship was an open secret for months, with Waters routinely favoring Nelson in strategy decisions. She looked up. They're painting it like I was promoted for being yours. Aaron crossed the room and knelt in front of her. You weren't promoted. You earned every inch of this rise before I ever touched your hand. Let them talk. I'll shut down anything that threatens your name. But they're not just threatening my name. They're rewriting my story. He reached up, brushing her hair gently behind her ear. Then we remind them of the truth. The next morning, Waters Enterprise released a joint statement. Mr. Aaron Waters and Miss Margret Nelson confirm they are in a committed personal relationship, established after full compliance with company HR protocols. All promotions and leadership decisions regarding Miss Nelson's position were made prior to the development of this relationship and reflect her documented contributions to Project Horizon and other core strategic initiatives. Waters Enterprise upholds its standards of transparency and ethics at all levels. It was clean, clear, legal. But the public didn't stop talking. Social media exploded. Some cheered for them, calling them a modern success story. Others questioned the timing, the power dynamics. Articles popped up comparing them to other infamous workplace romances. Anonymous sources from inside the company tried to stir the pot. Margret found herself scrolling more than she should, replaying every side-eye from the past year, every closed-door meeting she wasn't in, every whispered doubt she tried to ignore. Aaron noticed the shift before she said a word. One night, after dinner, he sat beside her on their couch and quietly said, "I want this long-term." She looked at him, wide-eyed. "I'm not saying now," he continued. "I'm not asking for rings or titles or declarations. I'm just letting you know, I'm in this, for the long life, not the headline." Margret stared at him, heart pounding. "I don't need you to rush. I don't need you to be ready tomorrow. But I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere." She blinked fast. "You're really making it hard to keep pretending I'm not already halfway in love with forever." He smiled softly. "You don't have to pretend anymore." Still, Margret knew she had to take control of her own narrative. A week later, she agreed to a one-on-one interview with a respected business journalist. Live, national. The interviewer opened carefully. "There's been speculation, criticism even, about your relationship with Aaron Waters. What do you want to say to the people who think you were handed your position because of it?" Margret didn't flinch. "I want them to know I was overlooked long before I was ever seen. I scrubbed floors in the same building I now sit at the strategy table in. I didn't fall into success. I fought for it. Aaron didn't put me here. He saw me here. There's a difference." The interviewer nodded, impressed. "And now that the world knows you're together, what does the future look like for Margret Nelson?" Margret looked straight into the camera. Clearer, stronger, and still mine. By the time the interview finished airing, support flooded in, from educators, from women in leadership, from students following Horizon's story. She wasn't just part of a romance. She was becoming a movement. That night, Aaron watched her on TV from his office, alone. When she finished, he clapped once, soft, proud. Then he picked up his phone and texted, "You didn't just protect your story, you claimed it. Proud of you, always." She replied 5 seconds later, "I'm not just proud of what we're building, I'm proud of who I get to build it with." The email came in at 2:07 a.m. Kobe had fallen asleep at the kitchen table, headphones still around his neck. Laptop open to a coding module he was half finishing for fun. Margret found him there when she got home late from a strategy session with Aaron. She gently closed the laptop and was pulling a blanket over his shoulders when the screen lit up. Subject: Full Scholarship Award, MIT Class of 2029. Margret froze, then slowly, carefully clicked. A full ride. Tuition, housing, books. Everything covered. Not just for his grades, not just for his tech, but for his story. She reread the subject line 3 times before whispering his name. Kobe. He stirred, squinting. Huh? She turned the screen toward him. You got it. He blinked hard, then sat up. What? You, MIT, full ride. Kobe stared, then reread it. What? Then again. Then he let out a shout so loud their upstairs neighbor knocked on the floor. Margret laughed and tackled him into a hug. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. He held on tighter. We did it. The next day, Margret told Aaron over coffee in his office. He was halfway through reviewing Horizon's Q2 budget projections when she said, Kobe got in, full ride, MIT. Aaron's face broke into a wide, boyish grin that wiped 10 years from his posture. Are you serious? She nodded. He hasn't stopped smiling since 2 a.m. Aaron stood, walked over, and pulled her into a hug. No hesitation, just pure pride. Then he stepped back and looked her in the eye. I've been thinking about something, he said, a little more serious now. That sounds dangerous, she smirked. I want you both to move in with me. Margret blinked. What? Aaron paced slowly, choosing his words. He's leaving soon. For college. For a new world. But we have a few months left. And I don't want us to spend them in separate places. Rushing through dinners. Stealing hours. She sat, silent. I want to build something with you, Mags. Not just you and me. You, me, and Kobe. All 3 of us. Just try it. Be together, in the same space. As a family. The word landed between them, like a soft landing after a long fall. Samly. Aaron continued. I know it's a big ask. I know you've spent your life being careful. But this doesn't have to be temporary. Just real. Margret didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, thought about the years Kobe had spent sleeping in a twin bed because rent mattered more than comfort. She thought about Aaron showing up when she didn't ask, never needing to be the hero, just choosing to stand beside her. Then she looked back at him. You're serious. Dead serious. You'll have to tolerate late-night ramen and anime marathons. I already bought noise-canceling headphones. She smiled. You're really not letting us keep our walls, are you? No, he said. I'm asking you to tear them down. Together. They told Kobe over dinner that night. Aaron cooked, reheated gourmet takeout, and tried to pass it off as homemade, which Kobe clocked immediately. You 2 are disgustingly domestic, he said, shoving another spoonful of risotto into his mouth. We have a question for you, Aaron said. Kobe raised an eyebrow. What would you think about moving in with me, temporarily, until you head to MIT? Kobe blinked. Wait, what? My place is big enough. You'd have your own floor, hell, your own wing, but we'd get to be together, share time, real time. Kobe looked at Margret. You're good with this? She nodded slowly. I think it's time. For all of us. He smirked. Do I still get to keep my anime posters? Aaron sighed. I'll allow it. Kobe leaned back, crossed his arms, and said with a grin, "Then yeah, I'm in." The move was quiet. Boxes, laughter, Margret pausing too long while folding old clothes, Aaron carrying too much and pretending it was nothing, Kobe claiming the media room and installing 3 gaming monitors before they'd even unpacked the kitchen. The first night, they ate pizza on the floor. No suits, no tension, just warmth. Margret looked around the spacious, tastefully minimalist living room, now cluttered with their shoes, bags, and the scent of garlic crust. And for once, she wasn't thinking about how temporary it all felt. She was thinking about how long it could last. The penthouse was too quiet. Kobe's room sat half-empty, suitcases zipped and lined by the door, Horizon posters rolled up and rubber-banded. His laptop was already packed, his sketchpads stacked. The gaming chair, his throne for years, stood alone, like a ghost of his childhood. Tomorrow, he boarded a flight to Boston. Tonight was Dubai. Margret leaned against the doorframe of his room, watching him nervously recheck his packing list. Again. "You know, if you forget socks, MIT won't revoke your scholarship," she said softly. Kobe looked up, smiled. "Yeah, but you might." She laughed, but her chest ached. "You sure you're ready?" Kobe shrugged. "As ready as I'll ever be." He paused. "You are too, you know." "For what?" He looked at her. "To let go a little." Margret crossed her arms. "Is this your way of giving me permission again?" "Look, I may be younger, but I'm not blind," he said, walking over. "You've been braver than anyone I've ever met. But you're allowed to live now, to love, to stop carrying the whole world." She looked away. He stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. She hugged him tighter. "I'm proud of you more." That night, after Kobe went to bed early, too nervous to admit he was terrified, Margret stood on the balcony, wrapped in a soft sweater, city lights shimmering below. Aaron stepped out quietly, 2 mugs in hand. "Chamomile," he said, handing her one. "Didn't want you up all night crying." She snorted. No promises. They stood in silence for a while, the kind that said everything. Then he spoke. "I've been waiting for the right moment, the quiet kind, not with cameras or press or staged perfection. Just you, me, and a city that gave us both hell before it gave us each other." Margret turned, confused. "Aaron?" He set his mug down, reached into his coat, and pulled out a small box. Her breath caught. "I love you," he said. "I loved you when you tore my pitch deck apart. When you told Sierra Lang, I make my own decisions. When you held your brother's dreams like they were your own." He opened the box. A simple, stunning ring. Classic, timeless, strong. "I want more nights like this. More laughter, more fighting over takeout, and reading data reports at 2 a.m. I want all of it, with you." He took a deep breath. "Marry me, Margret." She stared at him, eyes wide, heart pounding so loud she was sure he could hear it. Then, tears slipping silently, she smiled. "You're serious," she whispered. "As death," he replied, "but way more fun." Margret laughed through her tears, nodded once, then again, faster. "Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her like it was the only truth that mattered. And for a moment, nothing else did. The next morning, Kobe stood at the door in his MIT hoodie, arms crossed, waiting for the Uber that would take him to the airport. Aaron walked up beside him, coffee in hand. "You nervous?" he asked. Kobe nodded, terrified. Aaron looked down. "Good. That means it matters." Kobe gave him a sideways look. "You nervous?" Aaron paused, then smiled. "Less than I thought I'd be." Margret joined them, seconds later, hair still damp, her engagement ring catching the morning light. Kobe stared, then blinked. "Wait, what is that?" Margret held it up, sheepish. "He asked last night." Aaron raised his hand. "Guilty." Kobe grinned, grabbed Aaron's hand and shook it hard. "About damn time. You're okay with this?" Margret asked. Kobe threw an arm around her. I told you, someone had to take care of you. Glad it's someone who actually listens to you talk about market projections. The car pulled up. Time was up. Margret hugged him so tight, it nearly cracked his ribs. Be safe. Be bold. And don't forget where you came from. Kobe whispered back, I won't. And you, don't forget where you're going. Aaron hugged him too. Short, strong, meaningful. Then they watched as he climbed in, waved, and disappeared. Margret stood there for a moment longer, eyes misty. Aaron took her hand. You okay? She nodded slowly. I am. They turned back toward their apartment. No longer just a shared space, but the beginning of a home. The end. Hope you enjoyed listening to Green Tea Tales. Help our channel to grow with likes, shares, and subscribes.